So Scarlett Johansson wants to play a trans man. Let me repeat that. Scarlett Johansson wants to play a trans man, aka a woman who becomes a man. Scarlett Johansson is a woman. And here's the thing. People are having problems with that because she's not actually transgender. So apparently, if you haven't been reading the news, actors aren't allowed to act anymore. Are we serious right now? This is the type of identity politics that is just bullshit, and it's infecting our world like a virus. Scarlett Johansson, who is a woman, cannot play a woman who becomes a man. I do not understand this. Scarlett Johansson was recently cast in a film called Rub and Tug, a true story about about a woman who became a guy named Tex Gill, who was a trans man who owned a massage parlor, and apparently Scarlett Johansson was going to play his life story in a biopic directed by the same guy who did Ghost in the Shell. Now, we'll get to Ghost in the Shell later, but here's the main premise I'm trying to get to here. Actors aren't allowed to act anymore. Scarlett Johansson can't play a woman who becomes a man, and then the trans community is saying that a person who is trans should play the role. Now, granted, that's not something I disagree with. I get it. I get the frustration, okay? A trans person should play a trans role. I get it. However, I'm a little ignorant on the subject, so maybe you guys can enlighten me. How is a trans person going to play a trans person before the operation? How is it, like, are they going to regress in their transition and then do their transition again in the movie? It's just confusing to me. People like Eddie Redmayne and Jared Leto were both nominated for their films playing trans men. Where was the backlash when that was happening? Okay, I feel like people just single out Scarlett Johansson, and you could argue that, oh, there was backlash against Eddie Redmayne and Jared Leto, but the community wasn't vocal enough about it, and it kind of just flew under the rug. That just doesn't make sense to me, okay? Because acting is about acting. There was no backlash over Cate Blanchett playing Bob Dylan or John Travolta in Hairspray. Now, Hairspray is a pretty garbage movie, but that's besides the point. Actors need to act. This argument just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, why didn't you just cast a mentally challenged person in Rain Man instead of casting Dustin Hoffman? Guys, actors act. That's what they do. Here's the crazy thing I don't understand about the left. Because ScarJo can't pretend to be a trans man, apparently no one else can pretend to be anything that they're not anymore either. But here's the irony, the hilarious irony of this whole situation. If someone like Laverne Cox was cast in a movie to play Brad Pitt's wife and the script had no mention of that character being trans and that character was just a full-blown woman, the leftists would call that progress. They would cheer and yell in the streets saying, "We did it. A trans person is just playing a woman as they are. They are not trans. They are just a woman." That's the irony about it. Now, the best rebuttal that you can throw at me with this whole scenario here is, Rance, if you think people should play whatever they want, what would make blackface not okay? And that's a great argument. That really is a good argument. I've been sitting here for a while trying to think of a rebuttal for that argument, and I got to admit, it's hard. It stumped me for a while. My best response that I can formulate at this time on the spot is two things. One, race and gender are significantly different from each other, and that'll probably be a different video later down the road, but we won't really get into that here. And then secondly, blackface has a history of racist, prejudiced, mean-spirited intent. And I don't believe this film shares the same intent. I could be wrong because I don't know the exact story, but from what I gather, it doesn't seem to be an anti-trans film. Also, a third thing I'll add here, there's a significant difference between Scarlett Johansson playing a woman who becomes a man as opposed to playing a black woman through and through. And if we lived in a hypothetical, now just bear with me here. If we lived in a hypothetical world, not the world we live in now, but a hypothetical world where racism never existed, ever. No one even knew what the word was. Everyone lived happily. Think of your utopia. If we lived in that world, people wouldn't really have a problem with blackface because there's really no racism that exists in that world. Now, we do live in a world where racism exists. We do live in a world where people hate other people based on the color of their skin. So blackface is horrid. It is an asinine and downright evil thing. And I am not arguing that. I cannot wait for you guys to take what I said out of context and say, I condone blackface, which I don't. And it's really hard to think of a hypothetical world where racism doesn't exist. But really, really try, and you'll understand what I'm trying to say here. But being that racism does exist in this world, blackface is not okay. Let me repeat that so you guys don't take what I said out of context. Blackface is not Okay. And now I want to talk about Ghost in the Shell for a minute. I'm actually in the minority of people who actually liked that movie. I've never watched the original anime or manga, whatever. However, I understood the backlash that got a little bit. It's based off a Japanese property where the main character is supposed to be Japanese, apparently, and I get that. Okay, I get the backlash that she got there, but I feel like that backlash is sort of carrying over unnecessarily into her later work. Okay, I feel like this is a little more ridiculous than the fact that she's getting all this backlash on this role where it was a little bit more justified in Ghost in the Shell. Now, I don't think we should demonize people for taking up roles. It's a job. That's what they do, okay? Maybe the studio executives you can criticize because they're the ones who are basically pulling the strings behind the scenes, but I don't understand why people like ScarJo have to be demonized for the roles they take up, okay? They're doing it for money, and I understand that people will have the responsibility to fucking, go out there and say, okay, this isn't right. Someone like Ed Skrein who dropped out of Hellboy, like, I get that. That's great. I get that you want to give the Asian character his due, and I've always thought that. I've always thought that Asian characters from an Asian IP should always be played by Asian characters in the movie or any other adaptation. Same thing with comic books. That's why people get mad at me when I say I don't think they should turn Captain America black. Why shouldn't they turn Captain America black? Because Captain America was never black. Okay, why shouldn't they turn Black Panther white? Okay, because Black Panther was never white, and they shouldn't do that. Okay, they shouldn't race swap characters just for this leftist agenda, just for putting on this political agenda to people. But something like Ghost in the Shell, I understand. However, I have to defend that a little bit too and say that that's an American adaptation. Okay, no one was yelling at Naomi Watts when she played the main character in Gore Verbinski's Ring remake because that's an American adaptation. Okay, there's a difference between an adaptation and basically whitewashing. I feel like we live in this outrage culture now where people are just pissed off over everything. Someone was pissed off over how Pocahontas was whitewashed in the Wreck-It Ralph 2 trailer. She was not whitewashed. What are you saying? Are you kidding me? She doesn't look whitewashed at all. Like, sorry, you just want to be mad at something, and I don't understand that. And I know it's ironic for me to say, oh, you just want to be mad at something when I'm mad at pretty much everything. But hey, maybe that's the irony of my channel. Who knows? Anyway, I don't think ScarJo should be being demonized for taking up this role, okay? Because acting is acting. Acting is pretend. That's what it is. You pretend to be something you're not. That's in the job description. If she's playing a trans person and she's doing it justice, I don't see what the problem is. Now, again, I'm not transphobic. I know that went in one ear and out the other to all you leftists listening, but transphobia, which phobia means irrational fear of something. First of all, I'm not afraid of trans people. I don't hate trans people. When I see a trans person in the street, which I don't think I really ever have, because again, they're only 3% of the population, really. If I ever did, I would never treat them with any amount of disrespect. But just because I don't believe in something that you do doesn't mean I'm disrespecting you. It's crazy to me. You expect me to pretend that in my head that you are an actual woman, that just because you think you're a woman, you're an actual woman, okay? And that I have to believe that just because you do, and just because it makes you uncomfortable, that I don't believe that you're a woman. Okay, but here's the thing. I believe in God. Do you believe in God? You don't believe in God? Okay, well, that makes me uncomfortable that you don't believe in God. What would you do? Would you pretend to believe in God just for my benefit, or would you still not believe in God even if you said you did? You'd probably still not believe in God. Well, guess what? I'm not going to pretend that a man can become a woman and vice versa and sacrifice my beliefs just because it makes you comfortable. And I'm sorry if that upsets you. I really don't mean to upset or disrespect you, but I'm not going to change my mind. People don't change their mind just to make other people comfortable. That's just not how the world works. It's just when trans people come up to me and say, oh, you're even though you're nice to me and you don't disrespect me and everything, you're offending me just by virtue of you not believing the fact that I'm actually a woman or I'm actually a man. Well, again, you're offending me by the fact that you don't believe in God. So how come you can oppose your views upon me and say that I make you feel uncomfortable for not believing in something, but then all of a sudden when I turn the tables and say you make me uncomfortable for not believing in something, I'm the bad guy? This doesn't make any sense. It should be both ways. There's a double-edged sword here. Are you saying that you're going to pretend to believe in God for my benefit, just the same way I should pretend to believe that you're a man or a woman? But then they're like, no. They're like, no. You shouldn't pretend. You should actually believe it. Not to sound like a broken record again, but that's just not how people work. People just can't snap and change their beliefs just to make other people comfortable. People are different, and just because we have different or opposing views doesn't mean we hate or disrespect each other. Okay, that's just the world. That's just life, and we have to come to terms with that as a people. I have nothing with people sharing their views, such as I'm doing right now, but the thing of imposing them and trying to basically say that you're a garbage person for what you believe. If you don't believe in what I believe and I don't believe in what you believe, that doesn't mean I think you're a garbage person. I don't think a man can become a woman and a woman can become a man. But just because someone does, I'm not going to treat them with disrespect. I'm not going to go up to them and say that they're awful people just because we have a difference in opinion. But that's what leftists do. That's why there's so many leftists who are walking away from the leftist movement, from the Democratic Party and from the Liberal Party. And that's why there's a growing conservative movement, is because there's no in between anymore. There's only extremes. If you don't believe that a man can become a woman, even though genetically and biologically they are male, you're transphobic. No, that's not true at all. Just because you don't believe in God and you don't believe in what Christians say, does that mean you hate Christian people? I would hope not, but it does seem like that sometimes. It's a double-edged sword, and I don't get it. And I don't think we should demonize actors for pretending to be what they're not. That's literally their job. And I know the word literally is overused in today's society, but that is literally an actor's job, is to pretend to be something else. And I think ScarJo is getting a little too much hate for this. But she just backed out of the role, so some people are changing their tune a bit. Guys, just let actors act, okay? Come on. This is honestly ridiculous. Anyway, that's your rant for the day. Crazy. Goodbye.